Mr. Secretary, do you believe that all Americans should follow our tax laws?
Yes, Congress.
Yes, good, so do I. And do you believe that for those Americans who break our tax laws, they should be audited or held accountable?
Well, I think there are two things there. An audit is not a result of breaking the law.
Yes or no? Simple question.
Well, no, it's not a simple question. It's
okay,
a two-part
then
question.
let me break it into two. Do you think they should?
If you're asking me,
Please don't
should every
interrupt
taxpayer
me.
be audited?
Please answer that. I came here for answers. If you came here to waste time, I'm going to try to make sure you don't do that. Do you believe that people who lie on their tax returns should be audited?
Yes.
Okay, do you think that people who break our laws should be held accountable, our tax laws?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Very simple. Not a hard question. I'm glad we agree. So why is it that you are allowing President Trump to have complete immunity from being audited?
Tax transparency has been a political flashpoint in Washington for years, with lawmakers from both parties arguing over how much financial information public officials should disclose. Sanchez has now moved from a general discussion about tax enforcement to a much more politically sensitive question. The key issue is whether Bessent will directly address the claim, or continue avoiding it.
Again, I'm going to have to refer you to my previous statements. And
what was your previous statement, sir?
That I am unable to comment on any of the ongoing litigation.
Okay, can you name the ongoing case concerning President Trump's immunity from audit?
Sorry?
Can you name?
There are three cases.
Can you name them, please?
That are out there now, and I will be happy to get back to you on those, because again, I am not a lawyer.
Okay.
We are represented by the DOJ.
Great. You said that you can't because there's ongoing litigation. You'll get me the name of the ongoing litigation, because the only ongoing litigation that I know of is surrounding the $1.8 million slush fund, which has already been suspended. The fact is that the judge's ruling in the litigation that references that slush fund only addresses the anti-weaponization fund. It doesn't even address Trump's immunity from audit. So I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the judge's order in the Floyd versus Department of Justice case.
Without objection.
Thank you. Now, Secretary, you said you're not an attorney, is that correct?
Mercifully.
Okay, well, I am, and I'm actually proud to be an attorney and know the laws, and I know how to read a judicial ruling. Furthermore, I know that since 1962, the Supreme Court has held that ongoing litigation does not prevent someone from testifying in a congressional hearing. So once again, I'm going to ask, why are you allowing President Trump and his family to have complete immunity from being audited?
Again, since you're a lawyer, you will understand that the U.S. Treasury and the IRS are represented by the Justice Department and the Acting Attorney General.
Yes, but I just mentioned a Supreme Court case that doesn't bar you from testifying. It's pretty clear to me, though, however, that you're not interested in answering questions.
Congressional hearings often reach a turning point when lawmakers believe they're not getting a direct answer. Historically, some of the most viral hearing moments happen when a witness and a member of Congress start arguing over the question itself, rather than the subject being discussed. That's exactly where this exchange appears to be heading.
You're interested in arguing. Let me ask you this question. If President Biden amended a prior tax return and claimed that he was owed $1 billion, do you think that that would be audited, or should it be audited?
I'm not going to talk about any
because you're not really here to answer questions. I don't understand why you wouldn't audit that, and I don't understand why you wouldn't do the same for President Trump. So the ruling by the Justice Department,
do you have specific knowledge of an audit of President Trump?
Excuse me. It's my time. You're not here to ask me questions. I'm here to ask you questions, and hopefully you're here to try to answer some of them. I'm curious to know who counts as Trump's family for the purposes of this immunity. Is it his children, his in-laws, his grandchildren, his second or third cousin, his great-great-grandchildren? Do you know the answer to that question, Mr. Secretary?
Again, I imagine you have the Justice Department phone number.
At this stage, neither side is trying to persuade the other. They're speaking directly to the audience watching at home. Sanchez is about to make some of her strongest accusations of the hearing, and for the first time Bessent is given an opportunity to respond directly. The final exchange may end up being the most talked about part of this hearing.
Suggest you call them.
I'm not the one that runs the Department of the Treasury or that oversees what is happening with this immunity
And
that has been granted.
I'm not the one either. We follow the instructions of our lawyers, and we obey the law,
I hope
Representative.
that you're proud of your performance today, Mr. Secretary,
well,
because I
hope you get some social
think it's
media
pretty
clips.
safe to say that this is probably the most corrupt Treasury Department in our nation's history. And while
I am going to
while you
have to
dance
take
around questions
exception
to
with
protect
that. That is a
Trump,
slanderous
Americans
statement.
are suffering
That is a
in Trump's
slanderous
spiraling
statement.
economy.
And
Inflation is now rising faster than average hourly wages.
Nah.
Gas prices are at an all-time high with the war in Iran. The cost of groceries has risen 3.2% over the past years, and prices on most goods have gone up because of Trump's tariffs. So I don't see how you could call that anything other than a failure of the most corrupt Treasury Department in history.
Congresswoman is slanderous. She has nothing but the unsubstantiated opinions, and I will not stand for that. There is nothing corrupt. We move at the highest levels, and just because she cannot get the answer she wants, if she would like to give me facts, she seems long on facts, short on facts, long on hot air, and I will not stand for that. Yeah, that's great.
What makes this hearing worth paying attention to isn't simply the disagreement itself. Washington sees disagreements every day. What made this exchange different was the way both sides approached the conversation from completely different directions and never really met in the middle. Representative Sanchez approached the hearing as if the central issue was accountability. Her questions were designed to establish a simple standard and then test whether that standard was being applied consistently. That's why she began with broad questions about tax enforcement before turning to President Trump. From her perspective, if everyone is expected to follow the law and face scrutiny when questions arise, then public officials should not be treated differently. Secretary Bessent, however, appeared to view the hearing through an entirely different lens. Rather than debating the underlying accusation, he repeatedly returned to legal limitations and the role of government attorneys. Whether viewers agree with that approach or not, it reflects a pattern Americans have seen repeatedly across multiple administrations. Members of Congress often want immediate answers in public hearings, while executive branch officials frequently rely on legal guidance, pending litigation, or agency policy when deciding what they can discuss publicly. What's interesting is that this conflict is much older than the individuals involved in this hearing. Similar battles occurred during Republican administrations, Democratic administrations, investigations involving presidents, cabinet officials, and federal agencies. The names change, but the tension between congressional oversight and executive branch caution remains one of the most persistent features of American government. Another reason this exchange stands out is because public trust has become such a major political issue. Surveys for years have shown that many Americans are skeptical of government institutions, regardless of which party controls them. That means viewers often evaluate these hearings differently than policymakers do. Lawmakers may be focused on obtaining information, while many viewers are focused on something broader, whether they believe government officials are being transparent. As the hearing continued, the strategy shifted noticeably. Early on, Sanchez was seeking answers. Later, she appeared increasingly focused on demonstrating that answers were not being provided. That's a subtle but important distinction. In modern politics, the perception that someone is avoiding a question can sometimes become more significant than the answer itself. Whether that perception is fair or unfair often depends on the audience. The final exchange between Sanchez and Bessent may explain why this hearing attracted attention beyond the committee room. Once accusations of corruption entered the conversation and Bessent responded by calling those accusations unsubstantiated, the discussion moved beyond tax policy entirely. It became a direct dispute over credibility, trust, and competing narratives about government accountability. It's also worth noting that Americans generally support the idea that laws should be applied fairly and consistently. The disagreement usually begins when people debate how that principle should work in practice, and who gets to decide whether those standards are being met. That's why hearings like this often resonate with audiences, even when they involve technical, legal, or administrative questions. The broader issue underneath this entire exchange is one that Washington continues to struggle with. How much information should government officials provide during congressional oversight hearings? At what point do legal concerns outweigh demands for transparency? And how should the public evaluate situations where elected officials insist that answers are being withheld while government officials insist that legal constraints limit what they can say? Those questions existed long before this hearing, and they'll likely remain long after it. That's what makes this exchange more significant than a simple argument between a congresswoman and a cabinet official. It reflects an ongoing debate about accountability, transparency, executive power, and public trust, issues that sit at the heart of how Americans view their government. What do you think? When executive branch officials testify before Congress, should they answer every question as directly as possible, or are there times when legal and institutional constraints should take priority? Let us know in the comments below.